Sawadee Khap, Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal to my Sikh friend at the back there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Guten Tag to my friend Martin here. Anybody I missed? I can greet people in 15 languages, so I'm going to speak a universal language, English today, if you don't mind. Thank you very much for inviting me here today, and thank you also for being here. My speech today is going to be about peace through tourism, and because there's only 18 minutes involved, I'm going to get stuck right into it. Before I go into any details, I'd just like to ask one question. How many of you people have ever applied for a visa at an embassy? How many of you have applied for a visa at an embassy? How many of you have had problems when you applied for the visa?
Absolutely, especially for America.
Say that louder, please.
Absolutely, especially for America.
Okay. Do you know that there are, does anybody know how many, the citizens of how many countries can come to Thailand without a visa? Do you know, anybody know? How many people from how many countries, how many citizens can come to Thailand without a visa? Anybody know?
10,000.
There are about 42 countries, and that changes, 42 countries, people who do not need a visa, and about 24 countries who can get visa on arrival at the airport. Okay? So that's nearly about 65 countries who can come to Thailand without a visa. Do you know how many people, how many countries the Thais can go to without a visa?
Nine.
Sorry?
Nine.
Nine. Exactly. So there's a huge imbalance. I mean, you can get about 70 countries coming into Thailand without a visa, and we need about, I'm now a naturalized Thai, we can only go to about 9 countries without a visa, and when we apply for a visa at other places, we have huge problems. Now you'll see when I speak what is the relevance of this in the context of my talk. So, I'm going to be talking about peace through tourism. So in the website introduction of my talk, I said that true globalization and peace will only come when people have the right and the ability to move across frontiers without visas, security hassles, border control formalities, etc. So, like most provocative viewpoints, this may sound controversial and ludicrous, but let me explain why I believe this will happen. Let's start with the broader issue of peace and conflict. Human survival depends on 4 major elements, 4 elements entirely: land, air, light, and water. Of these 4 elements, 2, light and air, are intangible, cannot be divided or owned, and cost nothing. The remaining 2, land and water, are tangible and are divided into boundaries, properties, and territories, controlled by and owned to some extent or the other by countries and mega corporations. No human progress can take place without the prevalence of peace. Yet history shows that the vast majority of global conflict has been over the ownership and control of these boundaries, properties and territories, and the natural resources within them. The resulting clashes have become what the Lord Buddha called the source of suffering. For this suffering to be reduced, if not eliminated entirely, fundamental changes need to be made in the ownership and control of land, water, and resources. An entirely different form of globalization is required, with a different set of administrative structures that focus on a global good. The world's increasingly finite resources, already under pressure from population growth, need to be owned and divided under a more fair, just, balanced, and equitable arrangement. Now, the world's real wealth lies in its natural resources, such as forests and minerals, which are themselves the product of the unique chemistry of land, air, light, and water. Money is just a unit of exchange that derives from exploiting, buying, and selling these resources. The more an individual, a country, or a company, or a corporation owns and controls these resources, the richer he or she is supposed to be. The endless cycle of conflict for control of these resources leads to the endless cycle of suffering. The Lord Buddha saw this 25 centuries ago. The pursuit of power and wealth spawns more conflict because human greed is insatiable. At the same time, the state of the world today is unsustainable. It is already running out of oil. What happens when it starts running out of fresh water? If most of today's wars are being fought for the control of oil, the next generation of wars will be fought over water. This permanent state of impermanence and change is also part of the Buddhist cycle of life. Each time the cycle turns, it requires a wholesale adjustment of power structures. Those who own and control global resources and dominate the power structures always put up a fight to maintain them. Today, another monumental shift in power structure is underway. The rise of Asia, the forces of democratization in the Arab and Islamic worlds, and the onset of aging societies in the West. More change will come when Africa, the continent, begins to rise. So you've got plenty of conflict and suffering still to come. That is the global picture. Now for the role of peace through tourism and the freedom to travel through this world as a contributor to peace. As this present-day global shift runs its course, some barriers are already falling. Free trade agreements, for example, are all about the free movement of capital, products, and services. I believe FTAs are good. However, they cannot achieve their full potential unless accompanied by the ability of people to also move freely around the world without visas, work permits, etc. That will be next. As the travel and tourism and transportation business sectors play the most critical role in the movement of peoples, they will be both major beneficiaries to the global shift as well as contributors. Now, let's take a quick look at the history of travel, tourism, and transportation through the ages. It shows that the current cycle is nearly at the end of its rotation and ready to go back to the future. Human history is all about the mass movement of peoples from one part of the world to the other. In the old days, the movement was free of barriers, entirely free of barriers. People have traveled for centuries for exploration, conquest, pilgrimage, or commerce. Great religions have spread, empires have risen and fallen. Colonization has been all about the pursuit of riches and treasures. Some movements have been forced, such as people fleeing persecution or for slavery to work the colonial sugar, cotton, and tobacco plantations. Globalization has been underway for centuries, except that the pace was slower than it is today. People traded, learned from each other, told stories, made love, intermarried, etc., etc. They did not need passports or visas. All these movements led to mass shifts of culture and ideas, reflected today in magnificent monuments, mausoleums, museums, what the travel and tourism industry calls culture and heritage. When oil was discovered and the Industrial Revolution dawned, the transport sector boomed. Former caravan trails were replaced by highways and railways. Ships and aircraft became bigger and better. Old watering holes turned into inns and hotels. Then came the need to make bookings. So travel agents were born. Economies grew as products, services, and capital began to cross borders. Today, tourism has become a huge business with thousands of global hotels, airlines, tour companies, huge aircraft, cruise ships, convention centers, catering to more than 2 billion international and domestic visitors a year. Online booking technology and iPads are making travel even easier. People even live in one country and work in another. They travel for visiting friends and relatives, shopping, nightlife, cooking classes, sports, migration, medical treatment, you name it. Travel has been connecting people long before mobile phones came along. Has this made the world a better, more peaceful place? To some extent, yes, but certainly not to the full extent. Most people return home from their trips having learned something new, appreciated the local culture, met new people, gained some knowledge or wisdom. They bring back the best to their own countries. There is no culture in the world that has not benefited in some shape or form by a good idea imported from elsewhere. Look at the positive changes in Thailand after King Chulalongkorn the Great visited Europe. Look what happened after the former Prince Siddharth himself ventured outside the palace walls. The famous Indian independence movement leader, Mahatma Gandhi, had a nasty racist experience in South Africa when it was still under the former system of apartheid, and returned to India to start a non-violent people's movement that ended with the ousting of British colonialism. Which brings me to the next slide. The masses do not want to fight if the leaders do not. The masses do not want to fight if the leaders do not. I photographed this in my college days in the main commuter railway terminal of Mumbai, where I was born. It is intended to remind the people of India to elect leaders who do not make people fight each other. However, ask yourself, what is it doing in the middle of a train station? Would it help to have a similar sign in Bangkok? Here is one of Mahatma Gandhi's most famous quotes, which I abide by very strongly. There is enough in this world for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. Let me repeat that. There is enough in this world for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. There are enough global resources, land, air, water, and light, for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. But most wars are fought over these resources, and the decisions are made by political, business, or military leaders who are also having some personal gain, who also see some personal gain in terms of power, prestige, influence, and money. No one should be allowed to profit by promoting someone else's death, misery, and suffering. Whenever conflicts erupt, travel becomes the second casualty. When the Thai-Cambodia clash took place, the borders were the first to shut down. When relations between India and Pakistan go down, visa restrictions go up. In this so-called war on terror today, the Islamic world is facing the most artificial barriers and blockades to travel. But when the artificial walls dividing the world come down, travel flourishes and decision makers have one less reason to make people fight against each other. Peace then prevails. For that to make further progress, both countries and mega corporations will need to undergo some fundamental changes in the way they are run. Today they are built entirely around the pursuit of power, money, and influence, all characteristics that the Lord Buddha warned about 25 centuries ago. In the next 30 or 40 years, I believe that both will cease to exist in their present form. The artificial borders and walls created to own and control the land, water, and resources will fall. I believe more local systems will emerge, built around neighborhoods and communities, and brilliant concepts such as His Majesty the King's sufficiency economy and Bhutan's gross national happiness. At the same time, I believe new, more equitable ways will emerge to make, buy, and sell products, perhaps through cooperatives rather than through mega corporations. So the next generation of more fair, balanced, just, equitable systems to share global resources and reap the returns will be driven by the move to restore the world's yin and yang, the natural system of balance. For centuries, the world has tried various isms, such as socialism, capitalism, communism, and various shuns, liberalization, deregulation, privatization. None have succeeded. They just replaced one set of problems with another. In the next stage of the continuous search for a global good, the travel and tourism industry can make the biggest contribution. What is travel and tourism all about? What are its primary assets? Music, dance, arts, cuisine, crafts, nature, culture, spirituality, and meditation. All the good things of life. A global good can only emerge if it allows humanity the opportunities to experience and share the good things of life. The things that make people feel good. The things that make people feel good, the things that divert the human mind from the state of suffering and help attain a small measure of the most important Buddhist objective, enlightenment. At the same time, man-made and natural disasters such as floods, earthquakes, nuclear disasters, disease, and pandemics are occurring daily. These are called problems without passports because they have no respect for man-made borders. When they strike, people should be free to fly in to help without man-made impediments like passports and visas. Global peace and prosperity can be attained by allowing people to move freely across frontiers. Birds, fish, and animals can easily do so, but humans cannot, even though we are all part of the same global ecosystem. If birds, fish, and animals are not confined by artificial borders, why should human beings be similarly confined? Ladies and gentlemen, there have been 4 stages of travel since it became commercialized. The first stage was visual. People were driven by a curiosity to see famous sites such as the pyramids or the Niagara Falls. The second stage was recreational. When the 1-month annual holiday became legally required in the workplace, people traveled to take a break from work. The third stage was physical. People became concerned about their fitness, leading to gyms and health clubs in the hotels. The present 4th stage is mental. Now every hotel has to have a spa to refresh, rejuvenate, and relax. The 5th and final stage to come is spiritual, when the most important form of travel of all, a pilgrimage, will become the world's most popular movement. If any of you have not been on a pilgrimage yet to the holy sites of your respective religions, I strongly urge you to do so. There is nothing quite like it to change your life. So let me conclude, ladies and gentlemen, with the following summary. Because humanity has free access to light and air, people do not fight over them, because they cannot. If humanity can similarly return to the days when it had free movement across land and water, accompanied by fairer, more balanced systems of ownership and distribution, it will go a long way towards ending the state of suffering and achieving global peace and enlightenment. I hope I have provided you with some ideas worth spreading. I had a few more, but that's all I could find squeezed into 18 minutes. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure.